Hey, good morning. Welcome to our weekly training. We will begin the second consecutive week. We've been doing this for a while. My name is Jesse with ROI Safety Services, and we are providing small business training at no cost. We're covering some of the OSHA standards and how they apply to small business and how they specifically apply to whatever industry you're in, but primarily focused on small business. So, that being said, this particular training will be focused on programs and how to implement a program, what programs apply, and how they apply to you. So, let's get to it. So, we have this slide deck, and I like to use OSHA's slide decks because they're the ones who are going to hold industry accountable for the most part. And so I do look at their slide decks and I add some stuff to it, but just so that as a small business owner, this is what they use in their own internal training of their inspectors, and kind of give you an idea of what they're doing. I just recently had an inspection from one of our customers, and they had a neighbor, good old neighbor, give OSHA a call, and of course OSHA has to pay them a visit, and they went and paid their neighbor a visit, and they did not have any programs. They had no injury, they had no safety manual or an IPP, they had no lockout tagout, HAZCOM, heat illness, nothing. They had no programs. And OSHA gave them a document request, and they had to scramble to get all the programs from us, from ROI Safety Services. So we provided that to them. They will get a citation. That they will have some other issues come up. I don't think any of it will be a serious citation. So a few $100 is probably what they're going to pay, maybe a little more. And that's what happens when you don't have these programs, and they're very simple programs. I'm not going to dig deep into this particular slide deck, but I do want to highlight some areas that have to do with your business. So whether you have 50 employees or 10 employees or 200 employees, you have to have documented written programs. So I'm going to cover the very basic requirements, okay, so that you can at least have a starting point to what you need to do as a small business. And of course, here's the fatal occupational injury by major events. You got transportation is leading overall in industry, but falls, slips, trips, and falls are really high up there. Contact with objects, violence, and other injuries, homicides are pretty high, and exposure to chemicals. And you got fire and explosions, and this is not up to date. Look at how old that is. So you go to OSHA, and they just don't have a lot of resource available in terms of, well, they do have some data that's pretty good. Mostly the CDC will have really good data, but again, how accurate is that? In many cases, how does it apply to me? How does it apply to my machine shop in Corona? That's what I want to do is bridge that gap. You have a small shop. I need to know what I need to know about my shop. I don't care what Boeing is doing. I don't care what Amazon warehouse is doing. I want to know how it impacts me and what I need to do to keep my people safe, healthy, coming to work every day, and not have to deal with OSHA inspections. Or if I do have one, if my neighbor decides to call OSHA on me and they do an inspection, I'll be ready for it because I'm doing the right thing. That's really the whole motivation for these types of trainings. Now, I want each owner, or even managers, owners, whatever your role is, when you are dealing with safety, compliance, and even environmental, is to recognize this is what I really try to get through to when I speak to small businesses. If you don't understand the cost of an accident, I will make it very clear to you. Okay? If you have an injury and your employee goes to the doctor and maybe they got cut or they had sprained their back, and they go to the clinic, and then that clinic says you cannot return to work with full duty, full activity. You are going to have restrictive duty. That means that you cannot let them go to work at their full capacity. So you either need to give them a job that follows those guidelines on that medical report, and you must comply with that. If they can't lift over 10 pounds, you better comply with that and have them answer phones or do inventory, whatever. I hope you have alternatives for that person. Push a broom, whatever it is. So you got to understand, you get an employee that's hurt. They come back to work. They have restricted duty for maybe they have 5 days, okay? You're losing tremendous amount of output. Let's say they're a machinist and they're doing 50 parts a day, and now they're doing 0 parts a day, okay? And now they're just pushing a broom. So whatever that cost is per part, plus the man hours and all that other stuff, is a significant cost, okay? And then you have a recordable injury, and that goes on your 300 log, if you're keeping a 300 log. If you don't have a 300 log, you best call me, because you need a 300 log. That is rule number 1 when you have your own business. You must understand that there are requirements from OSHA that you have that are the bare minimum. And I'm going to hit most of those today. So you need a OSHA 300 log. You put that person's name on that 300 log, what happened, and then you put how many lost days they had. And then, of course, your insurance company is going to want to know about it. And then based on, how severe the injury is, that could impact your workers' comp. It more than likely will. Now, here's the thing. The more injuries you have, the higher your workers' comp will be, especially if they're little minor ones here and there, and they will eventually add up to an increase in your overall cost. So you definitely need to keep your lost time injuries to 0, and you need to manage your injuries extremely carefully. So this is the cost that you need to consider when you don't have these really good programs. They're good programs. You need them. But if you have 0 programs, then obviously you're not doing anything to prevent injury, to manage safety within your organization. So just to give you an overall view of recognizing these costs, understanding that these injuries will typically cost between, in my opinion, the rule of thumb is 3 times. I think it's much greater than that, because there's an emotional cost that occurs. And if you do not treat your employee that's injured with respect and kindness, they will go out and seek attorneys. This is the number 1 reason why they do that, is if they're not treated with respect. If there's anything that you take away from this short little 20 or 30-minute video, is you must treat your employees with respect. If they're hurt, don't put them down. Don't ridicule them, or don't do anything like that, because if they get their feelings hurt, and yes, I said feelings, they will seek attorneys. And I've seen it over and over and over again. So treat them with kindness. So understanding that when employees get hurt, back in the day, whatever that means, put a Band-Aid on and go back to work, or take some Advil and get back to work. That doesn't fly anymore. You have to treat your employees with respect, and you got to understand that if they get hurt, it's your responsibility to get them care. So please understand that. Now, there is a massive cost to this. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Recognizing the benefits of an effective safety and health program is huge. There's huge benefits to this. Having programs, everybody has programs, whether they're documented or not. If you're running parts through your shop, you got a program for that part, right? If you're running a warehouse, you got programs for receiving, shipping, labeling, and all of that stuff from in to out. You have programs, you have processes. That's all these programs are. It's how you manage safety. So describe the elements of an effective program, and then identify 3 methods to prevent hazards. Now, I covered this. There is a direct cost, and then there's the indirect cost. The indirect costs are all right here. The one that I think is the most sensitive area is the lower the morale. It really is a big deal, and it needs to be looked at closer. So if you have an injury, don't hide it. I've worked for companies, and this, looking back, I think, oh man, this was a big mistake. We would hide what happened to certain injuries. We would like, oh no, let's not tell everybody. We don't want them to know about that. And then, of course, when you do that, people start creating stories. And we don't want people to have stories about what happened. How did Joe get hurt? It's like, this is what Joe did. He came to work drunk and he got hurt. Just tell the truth. Or he came to work and he got his hand caught up in the grinder, and he was not drunk. He was sober. Something like, these are the kinds of crazy things that people do. They add narrative to what happened. So to be upfront and truthful every time. Now, there are huge benefits to these programs. So we'll cover some of how to manage a program. The benefits definitely are improved product, absolutely, processes, quality, better morale. You know what you're doing. You know what the expectations are. Improve recruiting and retention. People want to work for companies that have processes dialed in. When you go to Boeing, you're going to have clearly identified processes, what PPE to use, how to operate the part industrial truck safely. It just gives an overall favorable image. And I use Boeing a lot. I'll use, because they are at that upper echelon of managing safety, because they've learned over the decades that if they don't do it right, they're going to lose morale. They're going to get sued, and it just doesn't work. They're going to lose contracts potentially. So elements of a safety program is management must be a leader. And what is being a leader? Leading is leading by example, being a role model, doing what you say, saying what you do, no compromises. So you as a leader must create that culture. You must create the environment that will cause other individuals to act as you do in the workplace. So if you're wearing personal protection equipment every time you go into the machine shop or whatever areas you are working in, everybody else will see that and they will follow suit. If you're putting on your seatbelt on the forklift, they will follow suit. So you got to lead by example. It's mandatory. Showing up on time. Communicate your commitment to safety in the health programs. Have a written program for all of the required training all the programs that are required. And we're going to go over a few of those. Communicate the policies to all your workers. Now, this doesn't need to be some big fancy program with plaques and banners. If you're a company that does have the resources to do that, absolutely. I think that's great. It doesn't need to be that complicated. You can just get in front of your people, have a documented procedure about what your commitments are and what you're going to do. Do what you say what you do, spell it out. Define your goals. The goal that I like to establish with all of our customers, we want 0 injuries. That's it, 0 injuries. And how do we get there? Well, we're going to implement programs. We're going to train our staff. We're going to require 100% attendance to all training, whether it be monthly, quarterly, or annually, however big your company is. And then develop this action plan, assign responsibility. Who's going to manage these for us? And again, you can have 10 people to 200. It's not going to change much. The resources will change, of course, but the foundation won't change. And working with a lot of startups, they start off with 10 people and they have the resource. They're going to end up a lot of our customers are going to have 200 within a year. And so my favorite thing to do is to work with these small startups while they're young, while they're the first year or two or three, is to get them established in these processes of having all their programs in place, having a clearly defined safety program, and clearly defining who's in charge, and having specific measurable goals is key to this. So allocate the resources is key. Some smaller business, you don't need a lot of resource, maybe an hour a month. Other businesses, you need maybe a full-time person. It just depends on where you're at, but schedule training accordingly. Schedule these action items. Expect performance. Hold everyone accountable. Accountability is key in the workplace. Now, worker participation results in better design and implementation. So getting a safety committee together. If you're a smaller business, it may just be you and maybe the shop foreman. Encourage workers to report any issues. We cannot be out on the floor every day. Some of us can. Some of us are in management. Some of us are in sales. Whatever you are, we got to find out what's happening on the floor. We got to find out what's going on in the shop. Encourage everyone to participate. Motivate individuals to communicate with you. When I was in the corporate world, I didn't ride a desk very many hours a day. I was at my desk when I needed to be, which wasn't very often, a couple hours a day, and I was out on the floor. Get on the floor. Find out what's going on. See what kind of safety issues you see out there. And it also impacts production. If employees are working in a safe environment, they will produce more. Getting feedback from your employees is key to a very effective program. So doing inspections, communicating with employees, actually setting up a safety committee, as I talked about earlier, giving regular safety training, evaluating the information that you have about the products that you're producing and the chemicals you're using, looking at your safety data sheets, looking at your injury illness data. So if you have the OSHA 300 logs, review those often, especially if you are able to have a safety committee, and a safety committee can just be two people. It could be the owner of the business and the shop foreman, and maybe a machinist. That's it. It could be three people. That would be a pretty good safety committee. Now, if you're a bigger company and you have a couple hundred people, you definitely want a safety committee that has multiple attendees in various departments and shifts. But that's at a much greater scale. So worker participation, removing any barriers, ensuring that you will be available and always getting input and feedback. Hazard ID. We want to do an assessment. We want to make sure that we understand the risk. OSHA does have some resources here. You can look up your SIC code. You could find out what areas like businesses that, what kind of accident data they have. So that's always a good resource. But that is at a higher, maybe not necessarily. You can just look up your SIC code. If you got a machine shop, or if you have a distribution center, or you're doing some construction, especially construction industry, if you're framing, or maybe you're a painter, whatever the case may be, there's a lot of data for especially roofers. If you're using nail guns, there's a lot of data for that. So there's a lot of decent stuff on OSHA's website, but it does take some time to navigate through that. Now, hazard ID, conduct incident investigations regularly when there's an incident or even a near miss. Identify hazards associated with any emergency and non-routine tasks. Conduct tabletop exercises, and those are wonderful when it comes to preparation. Characterize the nature of any identified hazard. Evaluate your hazards regularly. That requires getting out on the floor, getting out there, seeing what's going on, talking to the employees. Prevention is where we want to be. identifying what areas need personal protection equipment, what controls do you have in place, what machine guards are in place, select controls using the hierarchy, which we'll cover shortly, and then develop and update hazard control, list of priorities, assign responsibility, develop procedures or job hazard analysis as you need it, implement other controls, like implement controls starting with the highest priority first, so any high level risk, and then follow up and confirm that controls are effective. So get out there and make sure that it works properly. Meet with your employees regularly, especially when you have new machine guarding or other type of engineering controls, that making sure it works and it's not being bypassed. And then, of course, education and training is really, really important. You don't know what you don't know. So I encourage you, if you're going to implement programs, you must have training, you must have accountability and feedback, and then audit the programs, and then retraining. It needs to be part of the process. One of the most challenging things I see often, I don't think I've seen a company in quite some time that didn't have this problem. And everybody has it, and it's turnover. Just about every customer that we've worked with in the last 7 years, we go in there, we do an audit, we want to find out where they're at with their programs, where they're at with investigations, safety committees, overall training, new hire orientation, all of these other inputs, just making sure, okay, where are you? At the end of the day, we have companies that are doing good on almost every area, literally almost every area, but this one area. Do you have an effective accountability program? In other words, are you holding your employees accountable? Are you disciplining them? And the response I see so often is no. Well, why not? Well, we have some people that have been here for a very long time. And we're just scared if we start writing people up, they're just going to leave. And I get that. I totally get it. I'll use a machine shop example. There's some machinists out there you cannot replace. You just can't do it. They do things to some parts that only they can do because they're so good at it. And that is a challenge. That is a challenge. But I encourage you, where is your heart at when it comes to safety? Where is it? Are you willing to compromise? Are you willing to compromise and risk that expert machinist who doing whatever he's doing to that part that only he can do if he lost a digit? If he had a major injury, how are you going to feel about it then? If that person refused to do certain things, and even though they were told not to do it, but you compromised. You said, no, they're okay. They know what they're doing. They've been doing this for 30 years. And then that one day, something happens. And you have no disciplinary action. You didn't document anything. Maybe you documented a few things, but there was nothing that you really did. There was no teeth. And so that is where I would want you to take a really good look at and evaluate, do I have an effective safety program? And that involves disciplinary action. And of course, I'm not saying do the total extreme and just start hammering people and firing people. That's just stupid. What I want you to do is be real with yourself. If you're going to have a program, you better have a disciplinary process, and you must follow it, okay, from top to bottom. Hold people accountable. They will respect you for that. I promise. They will respect you. And if they leave, hey, I know that's terrible. It's hard to replace Billy Joe because he's such a great machinist, but maybe he's just, maybe he'll go down the street for a couple bucks more. And who knows what will happen, when you don't hold people accountable, they just do what they want, they're better off hire somebody, get somebody in there, train them, but train them in a way that they will be held accountable so that they're going to be used to that kind of responsibility, right? I mean, that's why we get paid and do a good job, is because we need to be responsible and accountable. And I know that's hard. I'm very sensitive to that. This has been from the very beginning in my career, from the early 90s to today, is we are having a workforce that is getting less and less skilled by the year. And it's unfortunate, but that's where we're headed. So we really, that's a whole nother topic. I didn't mean to get too far off track on that one, but that's where we're headed overall. And we want to educate our employees. We want to get them involved. This is what ROI does. So we want training. We want just not training. I am so tired of this online training that we see. It's so pervasive in industry right now. It's, oh, just get on a video and just watch the video. You'll be fine. Sign here. You know, these online trainings, I am not opposed to them, but it's only a piece of the training if you want an effective training program. How are you going to know how to lock and tag out your CNC machine watching the J.J. Keller video or some other online training? How? You're not. It doesn't tell you how to lock out this whatever model of CNC machine that's been around since the 80s. You know, it's not going to show you how to do that. You still need to have an internal training process. You can't get out of that. So videos are fine, but they should be supplemented with actual hands-on training. And that's what we do. That's what ROI does. We come to your site. We walk you through the processes of creating your own site-specific training. We just started working with this really big company, and it was the same story, you know, turnover. They had really great programs. Their lockout tagout program was fantastic. I mean, it was really good. Every machine that they had a wonderful pouch, lockout tagout program, procedures, pictures, everything. But nobody used it. There was no accountability. We didn't even know if these programs were effective. Well, they're not, because nobody was using them. And so we got to have regular training, regular accountability. And if you're going to be locking out equipment, it needs to be audited. You need to audit these programs. So we got to have these effective programs. We got to have accountability and verify the program is effective. There are lockout, tagout, you have to audit it annually. Other programs, I think, in my opinion, should be audited regularly. Are you doing whatever program that is? Are you doing pre-shift or pre-trip inspections on your forklifts in finding those vulnerabilities, finding those areas that aren't working? We're going to skip the multi-site ones. It's basically talking about all your sites should be similar. They should be exactly the same at each location. Training is required. Preventive workplace. Oh, shoot. I don't know if we want to cover that. So we'll skip. This is not part of the. Yeah, we don't need to talk about this. I'm going to close this out. So anyways, to really wrap this up is, let me see if I can move that out of the way, is we really want you to focus on preventative programs and implementation, accountability, looking at your industry, evaluating it closely. And again, if you don't document, how are you going to verify that you're doing it? You can say as much as you want to, and you know, to a OSHA inspector, oh yeah, we do pre-trip inspections, we do this, we do that. But if you don't have any objective evidence, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So we need to evaluate our workplace. We need to have objective evidence. We need to be held accountable. We need to be leaders in our industry. I know this is a lot to swallow and a lot to evaluate. And I went through a big PowerPoint. This PowerPoint should probably be an hour because there's a whole lot more we can cover. But for the sake of keeping this under 30 minutes or 30 minutes or less, I want you and invite you to reach out to ROI give me a call. I'll help you out. Conversations are free. Conversations are free. I'd be happy to help you. Text me. Follow us every week. We're going to be doing this every Friday. I'm going to have various topics. If you have any specific ones you want me to talk about, by all means, I'd love to hear. I will be doing some interviews. I'd love to interview a small business owner. If you want to reach out to me, let's talk. Let's do a live interview. Let's talk about some of the things you experienced. The company that I just worked with, I'm going to see if they want to do an interview and on the process of what they went through during OSHA inspection, and get some real live business owners to see, hey, I wish I would have did this, and see where they went wrong, see how they could have done it better to benefit you guys. We have a lot of businesses in Southern California, a lot. I don't remember. I Googled it a few months back, but I don't remember the exact number, but it is a lot. And I think it's pretty safe to say that over half don't have any programs. I think I would be comfortable with that. So if you don't have any programs, or if you have programs and you want to make them better, give me a call. I'd be happy to assist you. Thank you. God bless you. Have a wonderful weekend.